My golden retriever, Bailey, saved my life by refusing to eat the anniversary dinner I'd spent 6 hours preparing. But when my husband Marcus called screaming that his entire family was being rushed to the hospital, I realized the food wasn't just spoiled. Someone had deliberately poisoned it. I'm Sophia Bennett, and what happened on our third wedding anniversary still haunts me. This isn't just about a dinner gone wrong. This is about how my dog's strange behavior saved me from a killer who was hiding in plain sight. Before I tell you what happened, hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more real stories like this, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. That morning started like any special day should. My husband Marcus was excited. Our families were coming together, and I was ready to cook the best meal of my life. But Bailey, our 4-year-old golden retriever, knew something was terribly wrong. He tried to warn me in every way he could. I should have listened. Let me take you back to that morning. October 15th, our third wedding anniversary. I'd been planning this dinner for 3 weeks straight. Not just any dinner, but the kind that would make Martha Stewart jealous. My grandmother's mushroom risotto recipe that she brought from Italy, herb-crusted lamb that cost me half my paycheck, and a chocolate soufflé I'd practiced making 4 times just to get it perfect. Marcus left the house at 7 that morning, kissing me on the forehead while I was already chopping onions. Going to get Mom and Dad from the airport, he said. They're so excited to finally try your famous cooking. His parents lived in Seattle and rarely visited. This was special. His sister Natasha was driving down from Boston with her 6-year-old twins, Katie and James. Even his brother Dimitri promised to come, and Dimitri never came to anything. He was bringing his new fiancée Aria, who none of us had met yet. My kitchen looked like a professional restaurant by noon. 3 pots simmering, the oven preheating, every spice lined up like soldiers. Bailey sat in his favorite corner, watching me work. He always did that when I cooked, hoping for dropped food or a taste of whatever smelled good. "You're not getting any lamb, mister," I told him, and his tail wagged anyway. He was just happy to be included. By 2 o'clock, I was ahead of schedule. The butternut squash soup was done and cooling. The lamb was marinating. The risotto base was ready for the final cooking stage. I'd even made extra soup because Marcus wanted to take some for the car ride. "The twins get cranky on long drives," he'd said. "Your soup will keep them happy." I poured the extra soup into a large thermos and set it by his keys. Everything was perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Traffic is brutal, but spirits are high. Mom keeps talking about your cooking. No pressure." I laughed and texted back, "Tell her to save room for dessert." At 4 o'clock, I decided to do a final taste test of the risotto. This was my grandmother's recipe, the one she'd taught me when I was 12 years old during summer vacation at her house. She always said the secret was in the mushrooms. "Never buy cheap mushrooms, Sophia," she'd say in her thick accent. "Good food starts with good ingredients." That's why I always shopped at Romano's, the fancy grocery store downtown. Their mushrooms cost 3 times more than regular stores. But they were worth it. Fresh, organic, and they had varieties you couldn't find anywhere else. I scooped some risotto into a bowl and picked up my spoon. That's when Bailey changed. He went from calm to crazy in 1 second. He jumped up, whining in a way I'd never heard before. Not his "I want food" whine or his "I need to go outside" whine. This was different. Desperate. Scared. "Bailey, what's wrong with you?" I asked. But he kept circling my legs, trying to push me away from the counter. I lifted the spoon to my mouth, and Bailey lost it. He jumped up and knocked the entire bowl out of my hands. Hot risotto splattered across my clean floor. The bowl shattered. "Bailey!" I shouted. "Bad dog, very bad dog." His tail went between his legs, but he kept whining, kept trying to push me away from the stove where the rest of the risotto was cooking. I was exhausted, stressed, and now angry. 6 hours of cooking, and my dog had just destroyed my main dish. I grabbed Bailey's collar and dragged him to the laundry room. "You're staying in here until dinner is over," I told him, closing the door despite his barking. Back in the kitchen, I looked at the mess on the floor. No way was I serving that to Marcus's family, but I needed to know if the seasoning was right. I grabbed a fresh bowl, scooped more risotto from the pot, and sat down at the table. "This better be perfect," I muttered, taking a large spoonful, then another, and another, just to be sure. Bailey's barking from the laundry room was getting louder, more frantic. "Quiet," I yelled, and surprisingly, he stopped. The risotto tasted fine. Good, actually. Maybe a little earthier than usual, but mushrooms could vary in flavor. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Marcus's picture smiled at me from the screen, probably calling to say they were almost here. I needed to start plating appetizers. "Hey, honey," I answered. "How close are you?" But the voice that answered wasn't my calm, sweet husband. It was someone screaming, "Sophia! Sophia! Don't eat anything from the kitchen!" The phone slipped in my suddenly sweaty hands. "Marcus, what's wrong? Why are you yelling?" In the background, I could hear chaos. Sirens, children crying, someone shouting, "We need another ambulance." "Mom collapsed." Marcus's voice cracked. "Dad's unconscious. The twins are throwing up blood. Natasha can't breathe properly. The paramedics think it's poison. The soup, Sophia. They tested the soup. There's something in it." My stomach, which had felt fine seconds ago, suddenly cramped. The room tilted slightly. "Marcus, I just ate the risotto. I ate a whole bowl of it." There was silence for one heartbeat. Then Marcus screamed louder than before. "Get to the hospital now. Call 911. The paramedics said it's mushroom poisoning. Death cap mushrooms. Anyone who ate anything from our kitchen needs help immediately." Death cap mushrooms. Even in my suddenly foggy brain, those words hit like ice water. One of the deadliest mushrooms in the world. They looked exactly like the expensive varieties I bought. They tasted normal, and by the time you felt sick, the poison was already destroying your liver and kidneys. Bailey started barking again from the laundry room, but this time it sounded different. Not angry or desperate. It sounded like he was crying. 20 minutes after eating the risotto, the first wave of nausea hit me like a truck. I tried to convince myself it was just stress from Marcus's phone call, but my body knew better. The room wasn't just spinning anymore. It was tilting in ways that made no sense. I gripped the kitchen counter and tried to dial 911, but my fingers felt thick and clumsy. Bailey's barking from the laundry room had turned into howling, the kind of sound that would normally break my heart, but I could barely focus on anything except the poison working its way through my system. 911, what's your emergency?" The operator's voice sounded distant, even though the phone was pressed against my ear. I managed to explain about the mushroom poisoning, that my husband's family was already being rushed to hospitals, that I'd just consumed the same contaminated food. She kept me talking while dispatching an ambulance, asking me questions about how much I'd eaten and when. "Maybe 3 or 4 spoonfuls," I told her, though honestly, it could have been more. When you're taste testing your own cooking, you don't exactly measure. The paramedics arrived in 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. By then, I'd released Bailey from the laundry room, and he hadn't left my side, pressing his warm body against my legs as if he could somehow keep me standing through sheer willpower. "Smart dog," one of the paramedics said as they loaded me onto a stretcher. He probably smelled the toxins. Dogs can detect certain poisonous mushrooms that humans can't. During the ambulance ride, between the IV drips and the oxygen mask, I kept thinking about everyone who'd eaten the food. Marcus's mother, who'd been so excited to try my cooking. The twins, only 6 years old, their little bodies trying to fight off one of nature's deadliest toxins. Dimitri, who'd finally decided to show up to a family event. And Marcus, my poor Marcus, who was probably blaming himself for taking that thermos of soup. At the hospital, the emergency room was controlled chaos. Doctors pumped my stomach, started me on activated charcoal, and began IV treatments to protect my liver and kidneys. The whole time, they kept asking me questions. Where did I buy the mushrooms? How many people had eaten them? Did I have any of the packaging? But the question that stuck with me came from a nurse who pulled me aside while adjusting my IV. "Honey," she said quietly, "the doctors are treating this as suspicious. Death cap mushrooms don't just accidentally end up in specialty grocery stores. Someone would have had to put them there on purpose." That's when Detective Lisa Chen walked into my hospital room. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. "Mrs. Bennett, I know you're not feeling well, but I need to ask you some questions. This isn't just food poisoning anymore. We're treating this as attempted murder." My mind couldn't process what she was saying. Murder? Who would want to murder us? We were normal people. Marcus worked in software development. I managed social media for a clothing company. We didn't have enemies. We didn't have drama. The most exciting thing in our lives was Bailey learning a new trick. Detective Chen pulled out a tablet and showed me security footage from Romano's grocery store. "This was taken 3 nights ago at 3:17 a.m., she said. The grainy video showed someone in dark clothing and a baseball cap moving through the store's specialty foods section. They went straight to the mushroom display. No hesitation, no browsing. They knew exactly what they were doing. This person replaced several packages of gourmet mushrooms with death caps," Chen explained. "They wore gloves, avoided cameras as much as possible, and were in and out in under 4 minutes. This was planned, but that raised more questions than it answered. If someone wanted to hurt random people, why choose such an expensive store where fewer people shopped? If they wanted to hurt us specifically, how did they know we'd buy those exact mushrooms?" The detective must have seen my confusion because she asked the question that changed everything. "Mrs. Bennett, who knew about your anniversary dinner?" I started listing people. Marcus had mentioned it at work. I'd posted about it on Instagram, excited about trying my grandmother's recipes. Dimitri had even shared my post, adding his own caption about finally meeting his fiancée Arya at a family dinner. That's when the first puzzle piece clicked into place. Dimitri's post had gotten tons of comments, including several from someone named Vera K., whose messages seemed a little too interested in the dinner details. "Who's that?" Detective Chen asked, noting my expression. "Dimitri's ex-girlfriend," I whispered, the implications making my already upset stomach churn worse. "Vera Konstantina. She's a scientist who studies plants and fungi." Detective Chen's expression changed the moment I mentioned Vera Konstantina. She immediately called someone on her phone, speaking in quick, clipped sentences about running a background check and getting a warrant. While she talked, I lay in that hospital bed trying to piece together what I knew about Vera. She and Dimitri had dated for 3 years, and their breakup 2 years ago had been brutal. Dimitri had caught her going through his phone, reading his emails, even showing up at his workplace unannounced. When he finally ended things, she'd sent him messages for months afterward, but that was 2 years ago. Surely she'd moved on by now. "Mrs. Bennett," Detective Chen said after ending her call, "I need you to call Romano's grocery store right now. We need to know exactly when you bought those mushrooms and if they have any left from the same batch." My hands shook as I dialed the number I knew by heart. Tony, the manager who'd served me personally dozens of times, answered on the second ring. When I explained who I was and what had happened, he went completely silent for so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. "Sophia," Tony's voice was barely above a whisper. "We had a break-in 3 nights ago. Someone tampered with our specialty mushroom section. We've been trying to contact everyone who purchased them, but our system crashed, and we lost 2 days of purchase records." He paused, and I could hear him typing on a computer. "You bought 3 packages of mixed wild mushrooms on Thursday afternoon. You were one of only 4 customers who bought from that specific shipment." My blood ran cold. Thursday afternoon. I'd posted my grocery store haul on Instagram that same evening, showing off the beautiful mushrooms I'd found for the anniversary dinner. Anyone following me would have known exactly what I'd bought and when I'd bought it. "Tony," I said, my voice cracking, "who else bought those mushrooms?" He gave me 3 names I didn't recognize, then added something that made my heart stop. "But you were the only one who bought all 3 packages. The others just bought 1 each." Detective Chen was already on her phone again, dispatching units to check on those other customers. Within an hour, we learned that 2 of them had thrown their mushrooms away after seeing a news alert about contaminated produce. The 3rd customer had been planning to use them for a dinner party next week. All 3 were safe. We were the only victims, which meant we weren't random targets. Someone had known I would buy those specific mushrooms from that specific store on that specific day. While Detective Chen worked with her team, I forced myself to think back through the past few weeks. Had anyone been asking unusual questions? Had I noticed anyone following me? Then I remembered something that seemed insignificant at the time. A week before the dinner, I'd run into someone at the coffee shop near Romano's. A woman who'd said she recognized me from Dimitri's social media, who'd asked if I was the amazing cook he was always bragging about. She'd been so friendly, asking about my favorite recipes, where I shopped for ingredients. I'd thought nothing of it, just someone being nice. But now I wondered if she'd been gathering information. I need to speak with Dimitri, I told Detective Chen. She arranged for a video call since Dimitri was at a different hospital with Arya, who, despite not eating any poisoned food, had fainted from the shock of seeing his family collapse. When Dimitri's face appeared on the tablet screen, he looked destroyed. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by guilt and exhaustion. "Sophia, I'm so sorry," he started, but I cut him off. "Dimitri, has Vera contacted you recently?" His face went pale. "How did you know? She started texting me 3 weeks ago, said she was in therapy, that she wanted to apologize for how things ended. She seemed really interested when I mentioned the anniversary dinner and meeting Arya." He paused, and I could see the realization dawning on his face. "She kept asking if Arya liked mushrooms, said she wanted to send a recipe as a peace offering." "Oh God, Sophia. She specifically asked if you still shopped at Romano's." Detective Chen leaned into the frame. "Mr. Bennett, we need those text messages immediately, and we need to know everything about Vera Konstantina's background, especially her education and work history." Dimitri nodded, already pulling out his phone. "She has a PhD in mycology from Boston University. Her dissertation was on toxic mushroom identification in urban environments. She knows everything about poisonous fungi." The pieces were falling into place like a horrible puzzle. Vera had the knowledge, the motive, and thanks to our social media posts, the opportunity. She'd known exactly which mushrooms to swap, when to do it, and who would buy them. The only thing she hadn't counted on was Bailey's incredible nose and his desperate need to protect me. As I lay there thinking about how close we'd all come to dying, the detective received a call. They'd found Vera Konstantina. She was at Logan Airport, trying to board a flight to Prague with a one-way ticket purchased 3 days ago, right after she'd poisoned the mushrooms at Romano's. Detective Chen rushed back into my hospital room 3 hours later, her face flushed with urgency. "We got her," she said, pulling up a chair next to my bed. "Airport security detained Vera Konstantina at Logan just as she was about to board. She had a fake passport under the name Victoria Kowalski, $10,000 in cash, and a laptop that our tech team is already examining." She paused, scrolling through her tablet. "Sophia, what I'm about to show you might be disturbing, but you need to see this to understand the full scope of what happened." The detective turned her tablet toward me, showing enhanced security footage from Romano's grocery store. Even with the baseball cap and baggy clothes, I could now see it was definitely a woman, moving with the confidence of someone who'd rehearsed this moment dozens of times. "Watch this part carefully," Chen said, zooming in on Vera's hands. She was wearing latex gloves, the kind used in laboratories, and she had a specialized container that looked like the ones professional foragers use. She removed 3 packages of perfectly safe gourmet mushrooms from Romano's display and replaced them with identical-looking packages she'd brought with her. The death caps were packaged so professionally that even Tony, the store manager with 20 years of experience, hadn't noticed anything wrong. "But here's where it gets really twisted," Detective Chen continued, pulling up another video. "This is from a week before the poisoning. The footage showed me at Romano's during my regular Thursday shopping trip. In the background, barely visible, was someone in a red jacket watching me from the coffee bar inside the store. That's Vera. She'd been following you for 3 weeks, learning your shopping patterns. She knew you always came on Thursday afternoons, always bought from the same mushroom section, and always picked the packages from the front because they looked the freshest." My stomach turned, and not from the poison this time. The idea that someone had been stalking me, studying my habits, planning my death, or rather, planning Arya's death using me as the weapon, made me feel violated in a way I couldn't describe. Detective Chen seemed to understand because she gave me a moment before continuing with the worst revelation of all. "We found her journal in her apartment," the detective said quietly. "She'd been planning this for 6 months, ever since Dmitri got engaged to Arya. The original plan was much simpler. She was going to poison Arya directly at the dinner. But when she learned from Dmitri's texts that Arya was vegetarian and especially loved mushroom dishes, and that you were famous for your mushroom risotto, she changed her approach. She wanted Arya to die from something you cooked, so you'd blame yourself forever, and it would destroy Dmitri's family relationships. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Not only had Vera tried to kill an innocent woman, but she'd wanted to frame me for it, to make me live with the guilt of accidentally poisoning my family. The really sick part," Chen added, "is that she had a ticket to Prague dated for the day after your dinner. She was planning to be out of the country before anyone even got sick. Death cap mushrooms have a delayed effect. By the time symptoms show up 6 to 12 hours later, she'd be gone." But Vera had made 3 critical mistakes. First, she didn't know that Marcus would take soup for the car ride, causing his family to get sick much sooner than planned. Second, she didn't know that Arya would get food poisoning from a food truck and skip the dinner entirely, meaning her intended victim was never in danger. And third, she definitely didn't know about Bailey and his incredible ability to detect poisonous mushrooms. "The forensics team found something else interesting," Detective Chen said, showing me photos from Vera's apartment. Her walls were covered with printed screenshots from social media, mostly from Dmitri's and my Instagram accounts. Red circles marked important dates, including our anniversary dinner. There were notes in the margins with observations like, "Sophia shops Thursdays," and "always uses Romanos for special occasions." And most disturbingly, "Arya loves mushrooms," according to Dee's post from September 3rd. She'd been watching all of us through our social media, building a murder plan from our happy posts and food photos. The detective's phone buzzed with a text. She read it, and her expression darkened. "Vera just confessed," she said. "Her lawyer convinced her to cooperate for a possible plea deal. She admitted to everything, including something we didn't know. She had a backup plan. If the mushroom poisoning didn't work, she'd planted evidence to make it look like you had a mental breakdown and poisoned your family intentionally. She'd stolen one of your old prescription anxiety medication bottles from Dmitri's apartment and was going to plant it near Romano's to suggest you were unstable." I thought about how differently this could have ended. If Bailey hadn't warned me, if I'd eaten more of the risotto, if the twins had consumed more soup, if the doctors hadn't identified the poisoning quickly, we'd come within hours of multiple deaths, all because of one woman's sick obsession with a man who didn't want her anymore. As I processed this information, a nurse knocked and entered with an update that brought the first good news of this nightmare. Marcus's mother had stabilized and was showing signs of improvement. The twins were responding well to treatment and would likely be released within a week. Everyone was going to survive. The trial started 4 months later, in February, when Boston was buried under 2 feet of snow. I sat in that courtroom every single day, watching Vera Konstantina try to explain why she'd attempted to murder 8 people over a man who hadn't thought about her in 2 years. Her lawyer painted her as a brilliant woman who'd snapped under pressure, but the prosecutor presented the truth. 3 weeks of stalking, 6 months of planning, and a sophisticated attempt at mass murder that only failed because of a dog's nose and pure luck. When they showed the jury her journal with its detailed notes about killing Arya and framing me, several jurors actually gasped. The verdict came back in less than 2 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of early parole. Marcus's mother, Helen, spent 3 months recovering. Her kidneys had taken the worst hit, and she now needs dialysis twice a week. But she never once complained or made any of us feel guilty. The first time she could speak after coming off the ventilator, she grabbed my hand and whispered, "This wasn't your fault, sweetheart. Evil people do evil things. You just wanted to cook us a nice dinner." The twins bounced back faster than anyone, their young bodies healing in ways that amazed the doctors. Within 6 weeks, Katie and James were back to their normal selves, though Natasha still won't let them eat mushrooms of any kind. And honestly, I don't blame her. The hardest recovery wasn't physical, but emotional, especially for Dimitri. The guilt of bringing Vera into our lives, of his casual social media posts that gave her information, nearly destroyed him. He broke up with Arya, saying he couldn't put her at risk again, though she fought him on it for months. He deleted all his social media accounts and started seeing a therapist twice a week. It took him 6 months to speak to me directly, and when he finally did, he broke down crying in my kitchen, apologizing over and over until Marcus had to physically hold him to calm him down. Bailey became something of a local celebrity after the story hit the news. Hero Dog Saves Family from Mushroom Poisoning made headlines across the country. The vet, Dr. Patterson, explained that some dogs have up to 300 million olfactory receptors, compared to our 6 million, and they can detect chemical compounds that signal danger. Bailey had literally smelled death in that risotto and tried everything in his power to stop me from eating it. Romano's grocery store sent him a lifetime supply of gourmet dog treats and offered to pay for all his vet bills forever. They also installed a new security system and now require special locked cases for all their mushroom products. As for me, I didn't cook for 3 months after the incident. The sight of my kitchen made me physically sick. Marcus and I lived on takeout and frozen dinners, neither of us able to even discuss what happened. But slowly, with therapy and time, I found my way back to the stove. The first thing I cooked was plain scrambled eggs, and Marcus and I both cried as we ate them. Now, a year later, I cook simple meals for my family, but I've never made mushroom risotto again, and probably never will. My grandmother's recipe book sits in a drawer, untouched but not thrown away, because maybe someday I'll be ready. We still have family dinners, but they're different now. We meet at restaurants mostly, or order pizza and sit around the living room. Helen makes her pierogies sometimes, using store-bought everything and making jokes about how her cooking could never kill anyone because it barely qualifies as food. We laugh because we have to, because if we don't laugh, we'd never stop crying about how close we came to losing everything. Dimitri comes to these dinners now, and last month he brought Arya. They're trying again, slowly and carefully, with no social media announcements and a lot of therapy. The most beautiful change is how we appreciate the small things now. Marcus tells me he loves me every morning like it's the first time. The twins draw me pictures that say, "Thank you for being alive," in crayon. Helen calls just to hear our voices. And Bailey, my beautiful, brilliant Bailey, sleeps next to our bed every night, still standing guard against dangers we might not see. The vet says he'll probably be extra protective for the rest of his life. And honestly, that's fine with me. He earned the right to be worried about us. If you're still watching this, please hit that subscribe button and share this story with someone you love. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because these stories connect us all, no matter where we are. Remember, sometimes the most ordinary moments like cooking dinner for your family can hide the most extraordinary dangers. And sometimes your greatest protector comes with 4 legs and a wagging tail. Trust your instincts, trust your pets, and never ignore it when someone tries to warn you, even if that someone can't speak human words. Bailey saved 8 lives that day, and all he asked for in return was a belly rub and the good dog treats. We owe him everything, and he just wants to be loved. That's the purest kind of hero there is.